Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. We're here with an extra for you, an extra interview pod, which we like to bring of a Friday, as they used to say down the East End, Kieran, of a Friday. And Kieran, recently we've been discussing quite a lot the idea of new business models, new ways of running football clubs, and we've talked about it in England, and we thought it was time to talk about a club in Scotland that's doing things in a very different way, a very good way, I think. So we spoke to Chris Ewing, who's the founder and the owner of Caledonian Braves. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. We've been focusing recently on new clubs and different models of ownership, but before we talk about the Braves, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in the club.
Hi guys. So my name's Chris Ewing. I'm actually the founder and owner of a small football club in Scotland called the Caledonian Braves. I'm an ex-professional footballer. I use that term very loosely, I have to say. I signed professionally for Motherwell when I left school and realised very quickly that I was never really going to be good enough to be a professional footballer and earn a living from it. I was then fortunate enough to get a scholarship in America, so I moved over to America to combine football and education. And that was a turning point for me because when I arrived in New York, I realised it was a big world out there and it wasn't just Glasgow. And I ended up, long story short, I ended up now living in France. And I set up a company called Edu Sport Academy, which then led to what we have today, Caledonian Braves.
That American route, a mate of mine was a good footballer. He went out to New York State just for a year to coach and learn, and stayed there for 15 and is now in Switzerland. It's a brilliant thing for young people to do, Chris, isn't it, that?
Brilliant. It absolutely changed my life. And tell you what actually changed my life, and it's a funny story because I'm actually a Rangers fan. Growing up, I was a Rangers fan, and my cousin married a Celtic player, believe it or not, back in the day. A guy called Tommy Coyne. And actually, I went to New York. The first time I went to New York was in 1994 for a World Cup. It's sad to say that as a Scotsman that the only time I've been to a World Cup was to watch Ireland. But I went to it was the Giant Stadium, and Ray Houghton actually scored the winning goal. Another guy from Glasgow, obviously a Liverpool legend. And that was my first experience with New York City. And when I saw New York as a 15-year-old, it kind of literally blew my mind. And I thought I need to come back here and live. And I was very fortunate enough to do that through football, when I soccer scholarship.
Yeah, Ray Houghton, Palace legend as well. So, which division are you currently playing in, Chris? Just for a bit of context.
So it's actually Tier 5 of the Scottish pyramid. It's called the Scottish Lowland Football League. So it's one step away from what the listeners will be familiar with, the SPFL. So we're very fortunate to be in the pyramid. Some would say it's maybe quite flawed. It's difficult to get into the SPFL, but we're very fortunate to at least have that opportunity to go up through the divisions.
Yeah, and you're Scotland's youngest senior club. So what is your presumably short history?
Yeah, well, so we do have a short history, particularly because the last couple of seasons have been curtailed by COVID.
Yeah.
But we have actually done quite a lot in a short period of time. We won a couple of cups. We became, the first club in the history of Scottish football to win a trophy with a full team of foreign nationals. And I guess just to give a bit of context to that, I set up my company called Edu Sport Academy, which essentially was bringing young footballers from France into Scotland to combine football, education and travel. At that time, we didn't have a football club. It was just a private academy. We used to play a lot of friendly games against professional clubs like Motherwell, Hearts, Dundee, Rangers, Celtic and the like. And after a few years, I thought, you know what, it'd be good to try and get us into a league where we can actually go and play for points and maybe be part of cup competition. And at that point, you really have a choice. Do you go under 18s? Do you go under 21s? Do you go juniors? Do you go semi-professional? And I thought, you know what? See, if we're going to do it, why don't we do it right and try and get into the pyramid? So we looked at the options. We could go into Tier 6 in the south of Scotland League, or we could go to the east of Scotland. And we decided to apply to the south of Scotland because essentially it was only one division as opposed to the east, which had two. And you can picture the scene. We went to the EGM of the South of Scotland League meeting to try and get an academy of young French footballers into the pyramid system. Literally, I think the average age in the room was maybe 65. And I'm thinking there's just no way that these clubs are going to go for this. It's too left field. But to their credit, they actually voted us into the league, and that was a game changer. Because it gave us the opportunity to go from being a private football academy to an actual football club, and that was the start of it all, I guess. Really.
So essentially, you were a school team, to all intents and purposes. Would that be right?
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I like to say we're a private football academy, so young footballers from France coming over, to combine their love of the game with English language, and obviously the experience of living in Glasgow. So that was kind of essentially the start of it all. And then we became a football club. We get admitted into the league. We then, applied for full membership of the SFA, which was actually refused initially. That was another hurdle that we had to overcome. We eventually got it at the second time of asking. And then, as you guys probably know, to become a real football club in a pyramid system, you have to have something called a club licence, which we had to achieve, which we did. So it's been to get back to your initial point, it's been a short history, but there's a lot that's happened. We've won a few trophies. We won the South of Scotland League Cup twice. And when we actually won that was taken into the National Football Museum in Hampden, because apparently it documented contemporary football history. So that was something that we're very proud of as well, to think that we had a trophy that was over 100 years old sitting in the National Football Museum in Hampden, which was excellent.
Well, you've sort of answered my next question, Chris, because I say you won the South of Scotland League Cup with an entirely French team. And I was going to ask you how Scotland took that, but if they're putting the trophy in the museum, obviously modern Scotland took it quite well. So I can't imagine, certainly 30 years ago in England or Scotland, that a team of French kids winning one of our big trophies would have gone down that well.
Yeah, well, listen, you'd be surprised. I think, to be fair, Richard Brereton, the creator of the museum, he's been very kind to us. He's been very positive. But generally speaking, I think when we first came around as Edge Sport Academy, probably Marmite would be the appropriate term. Scottish football and innovation are not necessarily two things that go well together. It's a very traditional environment. It's very stoic. Generally speaking, people are opposed to change. There's a lot of self-preservation, dare I say it, in the game. And us, the kind of new kids on the block, almost a disruptor, if you like, certainly wasn't really everyone's cup of tea. Some people did like us because we were new and innovative, and a lot of folk didn't. But I think over the piece, we've proved that we merit our place within the pyramid. We play good football. We employ good coaches, and we've certainly, we've been around there for a couple of years, and we're doing well. So I think I think it would be fair to say that we've won most of the doubters over, dare I say it, famous last words. But yeah, hopefully we have.
And I suppose we should actually point out, Chris, to our many thousands of overseas listeners, that historically Scotland has a different relationship with France than England does, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, the old alliance is alive and well, I guess, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned doubters there, Chris, and you say there's still some to be won over. What are the doubts that these people have about you or had about you?
Well, I think first and foremost, a football club called Edu Sport Academy. It was being labelled, well, that's not a football club, that's not a real football name. We don't have links to a specific town. Obviously, as part of the club licence, we have to play in a club licence ground. And literally, when we created Edge Sport Academy, there was literally nothing in and around Glasgow because there was a shortage of club licence ground. So, believe it or not, we had to play in a stadium that was 86 miles from where we trained, and we called that our home ground in Annan. So that's just to give you an idea of the kind of challenges that we had. So people were saying, Edge Sport, it's not a real name, not a real town, French players, and also Edge Sport Academy, I should say from the off, was a private football academy where students paid a fee for that. So there was an element of young guys coming and paying a fee to play football. So there was an element of that, but I think that again was one of the reasons why we looked to try and differentiate between the academy, Edusport, and what is now Caledonian Braves, the football club.
Well, let's talk about that differentiation, because that brief description you said there about what Edusport Academy was, private, fee-paying, etc., it does make it all the more remarkable that, as you say, in a conservative football association, they did eventually allow you into the pyramid. So, but what led to the change to Caledonian Braves, and also explain your ownership model now, because it's slightly different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very unique for sure. I mean, I guess probably. I mean, and I say this with a lot of humility, and I'm very proud of it. But I'm the only person in Scotland that owns his own football club that he or she has actually created. I think if you look across the average age of a football club in Scotland, it's well over 100 years old. So anyone who set up those clubs back in the day have now since moved on or passed the club on. So I find myself in a very unique position. So obviously, I mean, when I set up Edusport Academy, I didn't really have a huge vision of let's get to the pyramid and let's get into the Champions Leagues in the next 20, 30 years. Essentially, we set up the club so that our students had a competitive environment to play in. What was one of the best things, but also created a huge challenge for us, was when we actually won the league. So we tried to get into the Lowland League twice by application, because the league would take an application. We were rejected twice. We were actually told by the league secretary at the time, if you want into the Lowland League, you have to win the South of Scotland League, right? Which we duly obliged, and we actually became the first club in the history of Scottish football to be promoted from Tier 6 into Tier 5, which was excellent. Of course, it was a fantastic achievement, but it came up with its own problems, because the level in Tier 5 is far superior to that of Tier 6. So the reality of it was that we could not sustain the club with the current business model. We could not, essentially we would not be able to compete with young French players coming over in September for an academic programme when the league starts in July. And essentially the level was far more competitive. So we essentially made the decision to start bringing in Scottish players who've played at a certain level before. That comes with an element of expense, because you're having to pay some of the players' expenses and whatnot. And essentially what we've seen is what was set up as a football academy wasn't necessarily set up to sustain a football club financially. So we made the decision to separate the football club from the academy, and I came up with something called Our Football Club. Yeah. And our Football Club is almost like a vehicle, if you like, for people to buy in and pay £25. And what that did, it allowed them a vote. And what we wanted to do was use that community to basically change the name, change the logo, change the branding, and essentially create a brand new football club. And that's what happened. We had over 800 people sign up. And those 800 people, through a series of votes, decided that Caledonian Braves would be the name of the new football club.
And was there any opposition from the Scottish FA or to any of your existing fans to that change?
No, to be fair, in terms of changing the name, and the SFA and the fans were very receptive and very positive towards that. I think we did it for the right reasons. We were trying to establish a football club that essentially was financially sustainable in the longer run. That's one of the challenges we have as a brand new football club. You don't necessarily have an existing fan base. You don't have 50, 60, 70 years of tradition. And you're also operating in a very saturated market. Now, you take the West of Scotland, probably about 80% of football fans in the West of Scotland are either Rangers or Celtic fans. So how do we compete with that? So my thought process was in 2019, when we set up Caledonian Braves, you look at a community, and most people would, if you were to ask people what is a community club, they would think a community club, probably quite rightly so to a certain extent, is a club that serves a local community based on a specific geography local to that club. My thinking as a community can be a group of like-minded individuals that share the same values, share the same ambitions and hopes and interests, and it can be anywhere around the world because we have internet today. We have social media. So that was my thought process, to try and create up a global community that support the club. And that's essentially what we did. We set up an app. We created an app. We became one of the first clubs in Scotland, certainly at our level, to launch an app. And on the app, we have almost 4,000 downloads on the app from over 65 different countries. And the idea is to basically say, you don't have to be living in Glasgow to support this club. You can be anywhere in the world, and you can have an interest. You can download the app. You can follow the club. You can take part in decision making.
Obviously, I'm going to bring Kieran in off the back of this next question because we are all about the finance, Chris. Is the club purely financed by those 800 plus people paying £25 a year, or do you have other financial income streams?
No, so I mean, I guess the long story short of it is the club is financed for the most part 80% through myself. If I'm being honest, so that's again, I mean, that's probably medium to longer term. It's not sustainable. I'm quite happily married at this point in life. I think if it continues, then that may no longer be the case. I mean, the reality is I'm not a millionaire, and there comes a point where the club has to be financially sustainable beyond just myself putting in cash every year.
Yeah.
And I think I'm limited in where I can take the club alone, and that was one of the key reasons of setting up this new ownership model that hopefully we'll talk about in a moment, was also to share the club. I feel very privileged to be the owner of the football club, but quite simply, I think it's far more exciting and far more fun to be able to share the football club with a community and prove to folk that you don't have to be a millionaire to own a football club. That there is an affordable solution to owning a football club and being part of an ownership community. So to answer your question, it's financed for the most part from myself. Obviously, there's gate income. There's small amount of sponsorship, and obviously we get money from the SFA as an SFA member, and obviously club license. And if we're able to go on a Scottish Cup run, we get money through the Scottish Cup as well. But for the most part, it's financed through myself.
What sort of numbers do you get through the gate on match day?
It depends who we're playing, but again, it's a real challenge. We get anything from maybe 100 to 250, which is it's quite a lot when you think from where we've came from. We came from nowhere, but at the same time, it's only scratching the surface, And again, that's the challenge. How do you convince Motherwell fans to come to Caledonian Braves? How do you convince Rangers and Celtic fans to come to Caledonian Braves? And but we have seen that actually. We've seen fans from other clubs actually come in, and they say that they prefer to come to our games because there's more of a family feel to it. They come with their kids. The kids can play football after the game on the park. They can go in the park at half time. They can meet the players. They can meet the staff. And they feel that there's a far more welcoming and friendly family environment at Alliance Park than some of the other clubs in the SPFL.
Yeah, I've got a lot of cousins in Glasgow who are all Celtic fans, but I imagine they listen to this. I imagine they'd probably be only too happy to pop down and see you. You do have a bar, don't you?
We do have a bar, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they'll be very happy to go there then.
Yeah, we do have a bar, yeah.
Are any of your staff professional, Chris?
Yeah, so we have the Ricky Waddle, who's a coach. He's professional. He's I don't know if you're familiar with the Lowland League, but we have Rangers, Celtic and Hearts B teams.
Yeah.
So out with those three teams, he's, unless I'm mistaken, the only UEFA Pro coach in the league. So Ricky's been with me now for 10 years. He's obviously first and foremost head coach, but he does quite a lot in terms of community outreach, going into schools and working with the local community in terms of trying to promote Caledonian Braves as a community club as well locally. As much as we talk about having an online community, it's obviously important to us that we do have a positive impact on the local community as well. So Ricky Waddle, essentially head coach and jack of all trades.
Yeah, Kieran, if I could bring you in here, because I was going to ask you about the community model, which is a model we have spoken about before, but hearing that Chris actually finances 80% of it, you quite like the benevolent dictator model sometimes, didn't you? But how is this going to work for Chris in future? How far can he take this club?
Well, I think Chris knows the potential impact of going up another tier, and then your cost rise. Yes, you'll get some more money from the SPFL, but I can absolutely understand it from Chris's perspective and from his marriage's perspective. the essential need to have as many income sources as possible and diversifying by having this fan-owned model, I think, is intriguing. But I think it's indicative of many clubs, but both in England and Scotland, that have to really work hard to try to make ends meet. And I think, it's a fascinating project. It's a passion project, but it does come with a financial cost as well.
Yeah, Chris, we spoke to AFC Crewe recently, who are playing at a much lower level than you in England, but they have a similar scheme, but all decisions there are made by the community. Is that the same for you, or are there some decisions that you reserve the right to make yourself?
Yeah, I think we involve the community as much as we possibly can. Obviously, sometimes there's time constraints, where things have to be decided almost immediately, and that makes it a more difficult process logistically to put things on the app, etc. But certainly, I think one of the key things, regardless, is that all fans are duly considered, and I think that's something that's really, really, really important to football fans across the world. I think if you look at some of speaking about PSG here, for example, living here in Paris, and some of the bigger clubs, you could literally pay a couple of £100 to go to a game and with your kids, and you have absolutely zero influence on how the club is run. So I think that just football fans in general, no matter where they are in the world, just want to be duly considered. Now, for example, the cost of living crisis, I made a decision on my own to abolish entry fees to the club. So most clubs, I think, in the low league would charge anything between £8 and £10.
Right.
I heard something about, it was on This Morning a few months ago, that you could actually win in a competition free electricity for a month or something like that. And I thought, what has this country come to, that you can actually win free electricity on a game show? I thought, no way, man, there's no way that we can do this. So I decided at that moment, I said, you know what, anybody that wants to come and watch Caledonian Braves does not have to pay to enter. And that's something that we have committed to the whole of this season. If they want to leave a donation, they can. If they don't have any money, they just come and enjoy the football. And football should not be a financial burden on folk. The idea there was to give the supporters due consideration and understand it's difficult times for them, and if they want to come to a game of football, then they should not have to be stressed about paying for that, So that was the decision I made on myself. Fans obviously backed it. I think it was the right thing to do. But in terms of what other fans have done, they've chosen the name of the club, they've chosen the logo, they've chosen the motto, they've chosen the name of the stadium. They get to impact the governance of the club. For example, when Rangers Celtic B teams were invited into the league, they had a vote on whether or not they wanted us to vote on that, yes or no. At the AGM, any kind of votes that go for the club in the AGM, that's the fans that would guide those votes. So they're involved in almost everything at the club, strip design and all sorts.
Producer Guy, we're really worried now that you've started me and Kieran off about the state of this country, and that we stop talking about football and start talking about the fight. That's a remarkable thing to do, Chris, is to stop charging people to get in, especially when you have clubs in the Premier League who are agitating to remove the cap of £30 for away fans. So there are Premier League clubs who think they should be charging away fans more than £30, away fans that have already paid a lot of money to travel to the game. Yeah. And then there's you charging nothing for people to get in. That's remarkable. And you've got your new ground now, Alliance Park. Talk us through the move to having your own ground.
Yeah, so that was a huge challenge for us. We engaged with North Lanarkshire Council, just on the outskirts of Glasgow, and they were keen to work with us, and they saw the potential in Edusport Academy and Caledonian Braves having a home there. So to be fair to them, they developed an existing facility to make it in line with club licensing. So we moved into there a couple of years ago, and it's been great for us because it does give us that identity. We can therefore then try to outreach into the local community. But that was a mega challenge for us. We were travelling, as I said earlier on, literally 86 miles one way, so over 170 miles round trip to play home games. It was absolutely absurd. So now we have Alliance Park. That was the fans again that chose that name. A little nod and a wink, I guess, to the French connection there because of the Alliance, but also the project, in terms of the Alliance of just bringing people together through football. So, but that's been good for us, to be fair.
And you own the ground now, or do you rent it?
We don't. We rent it. We have a long-term lease.
Right.
So that gives us a level of security, I guess. So we have a long-term lease, and the idea is to continue to build and continue to grow at Alliance Park.
And can you still make some money out of it? Is it a revenue stream? Can you hire the bar out during the week and get people in there?
No, nothing really like that. We have a commercial contract with the council, and we have it for X amount of lengths per week. Right, okay. We use it for that. Ultimately, if we're in a position where we could actually have our own ground at some stage, that'd be fantastic. And I guess this is part of the what we're looking to do with this new ownership and crowdfunding model is not just to bring in money that goes directly into improving the playing staff. It's to really solidify the financial future of the club and make sure that the club has a platform to grow over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. There's actually a documentary. If anybody's interested in downloading the app, Caledonian Braves, on the app or Google Play Store, there's actually a documentary that we did, and that shows the transition from Edusport Academy into Caledonian Braves, and obviously also moving into the new ground, Alliance Park.
Good bit of PR work there, Chris. If you had a press office, they'd be very proud of you. I listened to you earlier, Chris, and reading your website, which I would urge anybody listening to this interview to go to the website, because it is really interesting the way you talk about your values. But you're almost proud of the fact that you don't have a traditional model, business model, and you don't have an established local fan base. Now, most of us would see that as a challenge, but you sort of think that that's a good thing in a way, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's be honest. I mean, if we had 500 people coming from the local community into the ground every week, that would be fantastic as well. I don't think we can ever neglect the fact that football clubs need local football fans. Yeah. But what I do think we are privileged that we're not hindered with any baggage or any politics or any committee or any tradition that holds us back. We can literally take the club in any direction that the fans want it to go. And it's so exciting to me to think we have 3,800 fans on the app from 65 different countries. The ownership model that we're about to launch on WeFunder will see us have literally a global ownership community, and making football affordable and proving to people around the world that you don't have to be the Prince of Saudi Arabia to own a football club. You can be literally, you can be a bricklayer, you can be an office worker, you can be a podcast host, you can be anybody, and you can own part of a football club. And again, it's the sense of community. I think, that football and sport in general, we have such a fantastic opportunity to bring people together, to give people a little bit of hope, taking a small club in the 5th division up through the divisions. I think it's so exciting, and I think we can do that through the app, we can do that through different online platforms, and I just feel like it's so exciting. I feel like we're in a very, very privileged position to be able to do that.
Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honey Crisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Kieran, in just the short space of time that we've been doing this pod, nearly 3.5 years. Is it 3.5 years? It seems decades, but in the short space of time we've been doing the podcast, when we started, this idea of a community club model, we barely heard it. And now more and more we're hearing that people are buying into this. And it just proves, Kieran, doesn't it, that, as Chris said, people are desperate not just to support a football club, but to actually, even in a tiny way, financially become part of it and then feel that they're part of it as well, because people want to invest more than just emotions in being part of a club, don't they? Especially at that level as well, I think, because as the Premier League and the Championship recedes into the financial distance, leaving the rest of us behind, we kind of think, well, as Chris says, this is the level we can operate at, and it's a kind of gentler place to be, isn't it?
That's right. I think for some people there has been a disconnect in terms of what we're seeing at the elite end of the game, and it's a fantastic entertainment product. But I think you and I are both old enough to remember where you could go into town on a Saturday night and you'd see some of the players, and they'd be eating at the same places as you, and they'd be drinking in the same places as you. And this isn't a criticism. Footballers are elite athletes. The game has become very enriched at the top end, and now there is that sense of disconnect. And I think by coming up with the community model, as you rightly said, the emotional investment can also be there in a different way. And different doesn't mean better or worse; it just means different. But I think some people quite enjoy. I mean, I live close to Lewis, and that's very much a community club where you can become a part owner for a relatively small sum of money. And people do that because they see the contribution that clubs make at a local level in terms of providing an alternative, providing a sense of purpose for people. That sense of history and heritage is still there as well, and also the chance to build that in the case here of the Braves.
Yeah, I remember going into a late night bar in Croydon once and seeing our captain Jim Cannon sitting there getting mildly drunk, which is some achievement because we'd been away at Grimsby that afternoon. He must have got down there at some speed. Chris, have there been other challenges other than financial that you didn't perhaps foresee in making the change from an academy club, albeit a successful one, to a proper pyramid club?
Yeah, I think there's always challenges. One of the things that we're trying to do is create content, so that we can service the fans that live abroad, so they can get to know the players, so they can get to know who's who, and have some kind of affinity towards the club and the players and the staff. So it's been challenging to be able to create regular and good content. That's something that we'll continue to strive to get better at. Another thing that we do is we stream the games live. So obviously we cannot do that in Scotland because there's a blackout between 3 and 5 p.m.
Yeah.
But trying to improve the quality of the stream to make sure we get good commentators and different things like that, good highlight packages. So it's just in the logistics, so just things like that. And then one of the things as well is just generally in Scotland, the pyramid system, although it does exist, it's quite flawed. It's very much weighted towards protecting the clubs within the SPFL because that's a members' organisation. And again, without getting too political about it, I know you guys, you have Neil Doncaster, I think, coming on the show soon.
We do, yeah.
But essentially you have 42 clubs in Scotland that dictate what happens for the rest of us, which is quite unfair, So we're always pushing as a group of clubs in the lower end out with the SPFL to try and open up to more promotion, to try and make it far more fluid because there's so many ambitious clubs in the lower ends, clubs like ourselves and clubs like Darvo who just put Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup, and there's so many ambitious clubs with good support and good following that are desperate to get through the pyramid system, and it's very, very difficult for us to do that as it currently stands.
It's said that I always ask people in Scotland this, partly because, again, overseas listeners, I don't think realise quite how big Scotland is. Is there not a danger, though, once you're in the pyramid, there's some enormous travel expenses to be paid there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Obviously, it becomes national. It's a national league as opposed to the Lowland and the Highland League, where it's kind of regional, I feel like. But I guess, but that again is up to clubs to cut their cloth and make sure that they have a viable and sustainable financial model in place,
Yeah.
So there is a lot of travelling, of course, most of the, for sure there is, but I think most clubs that look to progress up through the pyramid system are well aware of that, and can finance that. I think as well, just on the point of finance, this is a finance podcast, I think what makes this quite an attractive proposition, obviously, I think Kieran, you had mentioned earlier on, it's a passion project for anyone invested in a club, and that 100%, I would 100% agree with that. But I think where it does become interesting is that to go from the 5th division of Scottish football to the Premiership, as ambitious as that may be, is far more accessible and takes far less investment than it would to go from Tier 5 of any other major European division up into the Premier League. If you go from Tier 5 in England to the Premiership, it's going to take literally tens of millions of pounds.
Yeah.
Same probably in Germany, same in Italy, France and Spain, whereas in Scotland, you're probably talking, maybe 5 million, something like that. I would have thought to go from Tier 5 to the Premiership.
Kieran, I'll bring you in on that because our listeners love you, so I presume they'd want to hear you say, yes, I agree.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, good. Chris, we spoke to the guy who owns Dorking Wanderers just after they were promoted to the National League. Again, a remarkable story. They were essentially a Sunday League team, moved up through many divisions. He owns the club. He was managing the club. He was doing everything at the time. And I asked him whether it was fun. And he said it stopped being fun after the sort of 5th promotion when they began to realise they could get even further. Are you still having fun?
Listen, if you give me 5 promotions, we'd be in the Premier League, and I think that would be a good journey. I think but I listened to that show. It was very interesting, and that again was fantastic achievement what that club have done. To answer your question, of course I'm having fun. I think it's a great privilege to be the owner of a football club. And I live in France, but I'm back regularly, and I go in the dressing room and I hug the guys and I kick every ball with them, and I share the highs and the lows, and I think that's what it's all about. Football, it should be fun. The moment it stops being fun, then we just need to walk away from it. It should be fun. It should be inspiring. It should be a distraction from your day-to-day, the day-to-day chores and the challenges of everyday life. And I think that's what we can offer. We can offer fans an opportunity to be involved in a real-life football club and live the highs and the lows and everything that goes along with it. So, yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun.
Yes, I heard you mention earlier you were based in Paris. So do you walk around? Oh, I wish I was in Paris now. I really do. Do you walk around the streets of Paris with your Caledonian Braves tracksuit on and inviting people to ask questions about the club?
I have been known to put on a Caledonian Braves top now and again. To be fair, yeah, I stop shy of wearing the kilt along with it. But yeah, no. But people are aware of it. People, generally speaking, anyone I speak to about the club and what we're trying to do, and when they see the app and they see how ambitious, most people are really, really excited about it. They feel it's really something quite new, quite refreshing.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. But listen, we're talking about football here. It's obviously about bringing in money to help the club grow, but it's really, I can't underline the importance of this idea and this notion of community and this notion of you can be anywhere in the world, you can have any kind of job, and you can own a football club. We're making owning a football club affordable. And I think that's so important. It's having that real sense of identity. Eventually, just quickly, where I would like to take the club at the moment, we're looking to sell 25% of the club. The minimum investment is $100, and that's been put on a WeFunder platform, which is a crowdfunding platform. That's at CaledonianBraves.com/buybrave if you guys want to get information. But ultimately, where I would like to go is adopt the German model. So ultimately, I would like to sell the club to the fans, and it becomes 50+1, so that it becomes a fully fan-owned club. And then I can almost, if you like, to take a step back from it. So I don't think that model has been really widely adopted in the UK, and I'd like to see that at my club.
It's a remarkable story and a remarkable project, and I hope it continues to flourish. And the next time I'm up in Glasgow to see my cousins, I will make sure I come to see a game. In the meantime, thank you so much for talking to us, Chris. Hopefully we'll talk to you again in the future, and we wish you all the very best with everything you're doing.
Okay, thanks very much for having me on the show, guys. I really enjoyed it, and I hope to see you guys up in Glasgow. Come and see Caledonian Braves.
Kieran, obviously a very passionate and excited man about his club, about his project, for want of a better word. And it's brilliant that he's financing it to the tune of 80% at the moment. But even he admits that somewhere along the line, if it's going to be further up the pyramid, he's not going to be able to do it on his own, is he?
Yes, and what Chris has done is amazing, as well as giving opportunities for people to come from France, young people to learn a language, to enhance their education, and to put together some football related activity. And I love the fact that he said, I've made the decision that we ain't going to charge people to come and watch us. Yeah. Because things are tough for everybody, and if this can provide a little bit of a distraction, a little bit of light, and ideally, people will make a donation, but people will go to the bar and will make a little bit of money there. But as you rightly said, that there's a limit to what one person can do, and this is a labour of love for Chris's city. But you just wish them all the best. And I've already been looking at their kit, so you never know. The Baroness will probably kill me if I buy yet another football kit, but it's for a good cause. Yeah,
it's not a bad kit, and it's not a bad badge either. The badge chosen by the 800 or so members through their app, which has got the little fleur de lis on it as well to represent France. Also, it's interesting, Kieran, that notion of telling people that they can get in for nothing, inviting people in for nothing, is also a good way of attracting new fans and creating that fan base. But also it strikes me, Kieran, that clubs like Lewis and clubs like Clapton Community FC are attracting what you can only describe as a sort of hipster audience, if you like. The same at Dulwich Hamlet, attracting sort of younger, more radical, probably left-leaning fans. And it strikes me that Glasgow is a city full of people like that who will be intrigued by this model that Caledonian Braves are doing as well. So it's not a bad way of actually attracting people in, is it?
That's right. And some people have become a little bit disaffected by the domination of the two clubs from Glasgow. Very successful clubs, of course, and they are looking for an alternative. And I think this is a great way of dipping your toe into the water and giving people who can also be Rangers and Celtic fans an alternative outlet if they can't get tickets for Celtic Park or Ibrox, or if they feel that the prices are too high. Then this is something which they can go along and enjoy. And as Chris said, the kids can play on the pitch at the end of the match, and it's that that community appeal, which is very welcoming.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, Neil Doncaster, the head honcho of Scottish football, will be coming on shortly for a chat with us. And we will ask him Chris's question. And if you have any questions you'd like to put to Neil, then send it to the usual address, questions@priceoffootball.com. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to join them and make a small monthly contribution to the pod, that'd be very kind of you. And you can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. And if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at that same address, questions@priceoffootball.com. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.